Hello there, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Episode 4 of The Acolyte is out, and I gotta say, this is definitely one of the weaker episodes. Now, it's clear that episode 4 is supposed to be linked to episode 5. I mean, this is a 2-arc episode for sure, and so I was kind of hesitant to even review this without seeing episode 5, because this has a lot to do with just how Disney releases things on a weekly basis. But there were also a lot of things that stuck out about this episode from a technical standpoint that I just didn't really like. But anyway, the weekly release thing, it's kind of a love-hate thing for me. As a content creator, it's good for me because it gives me time to process things. I don't have to feel rushed to get content out. I can really sit down and look at everything and talk about everything I want, like last week's episode, which had just tons of potential twists and lore implications. But sometimes when you have an 8-episode series and you're releasing them on a weekly basis, you're going to run into some problems. You know, episode 1 and 3 all actually work well as individual releases. Each one of those episodes were kind of self-contained stories. Obviously, Disney tries to get you hooked in the first viewing, so they gave us 1 and 2 together, but again, that wasn't actually necessary. Those episodes worked well by themselves. Episode 3, which I think was the strongest episode so far, was one flashback, one concise story, albeit from only one point of view, and again, it works well. Episode 4, spoiler alert for those of you guys who have not seen it yet, ends on a cliffhanger. And so this is clearly a 2-parter, and it's a pretty annoying and also awesome cliffhanger. I think actually the end of this episode is what really saves this episode from being just bad overall. And I think one of the reasons why this episode fell flat for me is because shows like The Acolyte are kind of made by committee. You know, most Marvel, most Disney, most big blockbuster films with a lot of money behind it, with way too many producers, you suffer from this problem. I mean, shows like Andor are a rarity for companies like Disney. This is why I fought so hard for fans to watch it, because it is really just a special moment in Star Wars. You usually cannot convince auteurs like Tony Gilroy to enter a production like this, because usually they're not given enough free rein to actually operate. I've always said that Ridley Scott would be perfect for a Star Wars movie, or I would love to see him direct the Star Wars movie, but you know, Ridley Scott knows what it's like to work in a production like this. But luckily, Kathleen Kennedy was smart enough to take a step back and give Tony Gilroy full control of the reins on Andor, and so that series was super focused and felt like the work of one individual. Now that we're at the halfway point of this series, I have a better grasp of what The Acolyte is like, and yeah, it's a lot more like the other Disney TV series, which are made by committee. I would say that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau's Mandalorian's a little bit different. Leslie Headland, who I haven't completely figured out, she's been okay. She's been decent so far. But really, episode to episode, the quality is going to vary a lot based on who's directing and who's writing. Now, Headland directed the first 2 episodes of The Acolyte, and it's very clear that this is her show, and she created it because all of the acting, dialogue, well, nothing special, was concise and made sense and flowed very well. Episode 3, which I really liked, was actually directed by Kogonada, a Korean-American indie filmmaker known for his obsessive attention to detail. He actually first became known for making video essays in which he broke down other cinema. His 2 films, Columbus and After Yang, were both darlings on the art house indie film circuits, and so I understand why I liked episode 3 now, and it's also really strange they got someone like that to be in the show. I mean, you usually don't see these kind of indie guys directing Star Wars. And I also have to say he will be returning for episode 7 of The Acolyte. That's the second and last episode, and I'm guessing he's going to show us another perspective, maybe May's perspective of what happened on Brendock, so I am very excited for that. Now, episode 4 and episode 5 were handled by Alex Garcia Lopez, and I gotta say, I'm not really impressed. I mean, this guy has a pretty long list of shows he's worked on and directed on, including several superhero shows, including The Misfits, which is terrific in case you guys like shows like The Boys or Invincible. This was really one of the earlier takes on the unconventional superhero trope.
Are you weird, kid? Don't take this the wrong way or anything, but you look like a panty sniffer.
I'm not a panty sniffer.
He's a system director. He's probably someone who knows a lot of people in the industry. He does a decent job with certain things, I'm sure, like action scenes, fast-paced dialogue, that kind of stuff. But when he's directing scenes in The Acolyte, especially some of the dialogue scenes, I feel like things just feel really flat. Like in the first scene with Osha and Jackie, which is problematic because Daphne Keane, who portrays Jackie Lund's done a stellar job in my opinion so far, and Amanda Stenberg's portrayal of Osha has been pretty good.
Thank you
For what?
for helping me find my sister, prove my innocence, clear my name.
I was just doing my duty.
I may never have known for certain May was alive. And thanks to you, I've seen her with my own eyes.
This line is okay, but things just drag on from there.
Even if I failed to stop her.
I figured you'd stay until we apprehended her. I mean, you must be curious after all this time.
May is the Jedi's problem now. And I'm not a Jedi.
When you do narrative exposition like this, you gotta keep it short, especially when the characters themselves are talking about what's happening on screen, and not like, Morgan Freeman or Sean Bean off screen doing narration. It's just awkward when the characters are doing the exposition for too long themselves. You remember in English class how teachers would be like, show, don't tell?
Don't tell me you'll miss me.
I understand this moment of levity, which is designed to break up this 1 minute long dialogue, which feels a lot longer than it needs to because of the writing, I think. But again, these kind of breaks, if they're not done properly, can bring viewers out of the moment and kind of ruin the seriousness of the conversation here. I know what they're doing here. They're trying to keep us focused and entertained, but it doesn't work for me.
You care about May. You mourn the years lost between the two of you.
Jackie almost sounds like she's telling Osha a fortune about her or reading her mind with the Force. I guess it's not that weird because that is kind of like how Jackie's character is portrayed. So it's not horrible, but it just came off a little awkward for me.
Someone must find May before she does any more harm. But it's not me. I can't.
That's just really not good delivery of a line right there. And I have to say, I mentioned director being an issue here because Amanda Stenberg delivers a much better performance as Osha in the first 2 episodes.
Saul! I didn't do it!
Step away from the edge!
Please, Saul! Believe me!
It could also be those earlier episodes featured more outright emotional moments that allowed actors to do the equivalent of a full send. It's always easier to go big when you're acting, rather than to portray subtle emotions. That takes years and years of experience. We can all do outbursts to a certain degree. Also, Leslie Headland directed those first 2 episodes, and again, it's clear she understood her own story much better than Garcia Lopez does here. I think with episode 4, what you're seeing is average directing and average writing, which in turn exposes the actress's limitations here. So going back to the whole, subtle emotions are definitely harder to portray. Now that I think about it, my earlier reviews of the first few episodes, I talked about how I like Stenberg's portrayal of Osha more than May. And that's probably because May had more kind of subtle lines in those first few episodes. And that's probably why I didn't like May as much as I did Osha, now that I think about it.
It wouldn't bode well for either of us if you told him about this.
Of course.
But here's the thing, the main character of a show like this, Osha, May, they're supposed to be the everyman or every woman. I always bring up Vinny Chase in The Entourage as an example of this, or even Luke Skywalker in the original saga. The main character is not supposed to be the best actor or actress. They're supposed to be relatable and vanilla and not turn people off from the show. I know there's a lot of controversy about Stenberg and things she said like many years ago. I feel like people are nitpicking a little bit. I really think you guys should tune out of this culture war stuff, but again, the main character is supposed to be the vehicle through which we see everything. It's the surrounding characters that are supposed to shine, like Han Solo or Ari in The Entourage. And in The Acolyte, I'm starting to notice when I look back that with all the Osha and May scenes, it's the people she's paired with that are important. Whether it's the stoic Carrie-Anne Moss or the extremely warm and compassionate Lee Jung-jae, the quirky Manny Jacinto, and the always sharp Daphne Keane. I mean, even Charlie Barnett as Yord is Yord. These surrounding characters work really well for me, at least so far, and they've really hidden Amanda Stenberg's limited range as an actress. If you take a look at Amanda Stenberg's fight scenes, it becomes very apparent what she is and what she isn't. If she were a big roided out guy, I think it'd be even clearer. You see, Stenberg very much fits the mold of a traditional action hero. She's athletic. Clearly, she can move very well on screen. The fight scenes have been awesome so far. But she really struggles to play one character, or at least all the ranges of one character. And so putting her in as two characters, this was probably not a good idea. This was, again, hidden in the first two episodes thanks to Headland's better actor, direction, and writing. And episode 3 didn't really feature her at all. But episode 4 is where things kind of stumble and it becomes very apparent who the weakest link of the show is. Anyway, the opening scene with Jackie ends with another attempt at making light to the situation.
Someone must find May before she does any more harm, but it's not me. I can't. Next time I'm on Coruscant, though, I'll look you up. And we'll go to a cantina and trade stories about Master Soul.
Did you say goodbye to him?
I've caused him enough trouble.
And again, this creates this like roller coaster effect. Are we being serious? Are we joking? And it really cheapens what they're trying to do. You know, we're trying to explain here why Osha doesn't want to pursue May. We're trying to build this up, right? And to make matters worse, we find out that this entire scene of exposition was just kind of unnecessary because it takes just 1 second for Master Soul to convince Osha to once again care about going after her sister.
She's a murderer.
But she is still your family.
Fine.
They should have just kept that first scene out, or they could have done it better. I mean, actually, the end of episode 2 has some interesting things going for it.
We both knew this is where this trip was headed.
I didn't know you were still so angry.
She killed my family. She destroyed my life.
This is grief. Let it go.
You are not my master. I do not need your permission to go out there and confront her. I deserve justice.
You want revenge.
And when Osha misses May on purpose with that stun gun, this is intriguing. You know, this is intriguing. It's show, don't tell. But whatever kind of intrigue that was built up is just kind of ruined by the clunky writing and the weird pacing for episode 4. I mean, even Lee Jung-jae's usual heartfelt performance in the busy lobby of the Jedi Order feels a bit rushed. It could be that they're leaning a little too heavily on him at this stage. It makes sense for him to display this emotion in the first episode where Master Soul sees Osha for the first time in a long time and then saves her from falling off that cliff. It also made sense for him to be like this in the third episode as well, which also ended up with him saving Osha from falling off a cliff. But they really can't be doing this every episode. I mean, one of the reasons why Lee Jung-jae is so great is his range as an actor. If you don't display the other emotions he can have, it cheapens these heartfelt scenes because we kind of become desensitized to them and we become used to him just being very warm and compassionate all the time. What is interesting is I like Stenberg's acting as May a little bit more than I do as Osha in this episode, which is a complete opposite from how I felt in episode 1 and 2. Her suspicion of her fixer Chimera grows as it becomes clear that there's something off about him. We did an entire episode where we were convinced that he was a Sith Lord, but actually seeing Chimera's growing uncertainty and fear as they get deeper into the jungle and closer to the Master, well, that makes me think otherwise. There's obviously more to this character, which is intriguing, but Chimera is definitely an underling. The line about the Master collecting people just gives me really dark vibes.
Your master wants
What
you
kind of
to...
deal did you make with him?
I didn't. We didn't exactly. I just owe him. You know how he is. He collects people.
Unless they're throwing me off, because, during that last scene, Chimera disappears right when the masked figure appears. But anyway, let's continue. What makes the chemistry between Chimera and May work is that they're both kind of casual with each other. The banter seems a bit more natural, and it fits Stenberg's acting style, which is sort of just normal conversational talking. But, because these characters are both so casual, I actually miss all of the foreshadowing in this episode that's supposed to lead up to May's, complete 180 turn against her master at the end.
After running through that forest for an extremely long time, I realized something. I don't need to do this anymore. I don't need to kill a Jedi without a weapon. I don't need to keep this deal. What?
Now, if I look back at all the Chimera May scenes, it becomes a lot more obvious what they were trying to do. But again, I think it's because of the tone or maybe just poor acting. It just seems so abrupt for me. And, you don't want your audience to have to go look back in the episode to figure out what's going on. I think maybe May and Chimera need one more scene in between them to make this transition from May obeying the Master to not obeying the Master feel more natural. I also felt like there were some minor inconsistencies on how Yord was treating Osha. Now they clearly have a shared past history and they definitely care about each other.
You finally passed your trials.
I made Knight 2 years ago.
Never thought I would see the day.
I never thought that I would see you again.
I've known you since we were younglings. May has always been your wound. Maybe Sol brought you here to face her.
But then, Yord gets really petty about things like Osha keeping her blaster. It just seems kind of off to me.
You're gonna need to hand that blaster over.
Well, it's mine now.
Well, it's actually the property of the Jedi Order, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to insist that you hand it over.
I think this is a writing issue. I also think the director here should know about these inconsistencies. He should know these characters a little better so that these scenes don't make it to the final cut. I have to say, on a positive note, the physical sets and on-location shots at Kofar are absolutely beautiful. The aerial landscapes, the deep, thick jungle foliage, you can see where they spent their money here. The lighting is also solid. And I gotta say, it's not really easy to light these kind of scenes because, forests are actually very dark, especially ones with thick, high canopies. The production team avoids the tendency to go too crazy with the lighting here, and they kind of settle for a more flat tone, which isn't visually as interesting, but it's honestly how this should be shot. Although once the sunset comes out, it starts to get a little less disciplined. You start seeing weird light sources here and there. But overall, the vibe here is pretty cool. I mean, they're really nailing the vibe of Forest Planet. In a lot of ways, this reminds me of what I always thought Kashyyyk would look like in live action. The corrupted area of the woods with those flying insectoid things, it's the kind of nightmarish vibe the floor of the forest should have. So again, great job, production team. So episode 1 and 2 had me pretty neutral, as I said before. For me, the lore expansion was more interesting there, and also the teasing of the mystery is really interesting. Episode 3 blew me away. I know I got a lot of hate for it, but I still stand by it. That was a really cool episode. Episode 4 was not good. But if there is something that saves this episode, it is the ending. I mean, finding Kelnaka dead, and the Dark Side Master appearing out of nowhere and just blasting everyone away to oblivion with the Force. That's got me hooked again. Now, guys, I know I've been pretty critical about this episode, but I'm not really worried about this entire series because, I've said this multiple times now. I don't really go into Star Wars for high-level cinema. Right? That's just what it is. When Andor came out, it stunned me because, wow, I've always dreamed of this. I didn't know they would actually, do this, which is, make a properly good film and set it in the Star Wars universe. But Star Wars has always been about entertainment for the masses. For me, it's about the lore, it's about the world building, it's about all the other stories on the peripherals, it's about the curiosity I have about how things work in universe. That's why I do this channel, right? I mean, if you think about it, the prequels were kind of a mess if you're going to critique it from a traditional cinema point of view. The original trilogy is pretty clunky in a lot of parts. It just did a lot of things first. But we love all of these shows because they're a part of a universe that we love. I think the online discourse has completely, gone out of control. I think there are a lot of unhinged grifters out there. These people with the culture war that are just mean and terrible to people for no absolute reason. It's not just here, it's almost everywhere. There's really no video game or cinema universe that has remained unscathed from just this craziness, and I hate it. I talk about it in a lot of my episodes. It bothers me a lot. But with the Acolyte, I'm really not worried about this series because if you're a true fan, this is really just an expansion of the lore. They're unlocking another part in Star Wars history. We're finding out a lot more details about a period of time that we honestly don't know that much about, and that's what's interesting to me because I guess I'm just a Star Wars fan. I don't know. Well, anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.